Hello viewers, let me quickly introduce myself before proceeding with the training videos for PMI-ACP. I am Vinayak Agarwal. I am a PMP, PMI-ACP and an ITL certified IT professional with an experience of more than a decade now in the field of business analysis, project management and agile methodologies. In this session, that is module number 4, I will be cultivating you with the planning, monitoring and adapting in agile. A rapid briefing of the topics which I will be covering today for you are adaptive planning, progressive elaboration or role-based planning, user stories, epics, themes, 3 C's of a user story and invest, agile planning, the 3 planning levels, MMFs, that is minimal marketable features, time boxing, agile contracting methods, burn charts, a kind of an information radiators, CFDs, that is cumulative flow diagrams. We will talk about Kanban boards, structure of a retrospective meetings, innovative games like planning focus, etc. And finally, we will end the session with process tailoring.
So what do we mean by adaptive planning? Planning, as we are already aware, that to have a final product, service or in place on time, we should have a proper planning. But what is adaptive planning? Because agile is an adaptive approach in which we don't have the requirements finalized till the end of the project. So we need to have our planning in an adaptive or a kind of a dynamic fashion in which we don't have a frozen plan. We can modify our plan based on our needs or change in the requirement. So traditionally IT delivery planning would be described as a predictive planning, but now in agile it is adaptive planning. What exactly is predictive planning? With the plan defined at the beginning of the project and then managing the project to the plan. So in predictive, we create a plan at the beginning of the project and we follow that plan only to deliver the project. And we don't modify our plan. We will go with the plan. That is a predictive approach, which is not well versed in this global changing market. So we have to adapt to the change. So adaptive planning will also start defining a plan, but acknowledges that once work starts, the plan will change. And the plan needs to be reflect this new knowledge or skill or learnings. Next, we have plans for an agile team will be adapted based on the delivery each iteration. So we create a plan for every iteration and we try to restrict to that plan with an adaptive approach, and in subsequent iteration we will modify our plan again with our learnings and continuous improvement mechanisms from the past release. So as each iteration delivers a working, tested increment, teams have an accurate measure on what can be delivered. So if you see the image, we have an original plan which is straight, but actual plan is definitely not straight. It is kind of an hazy one, which is just like a thread rolling here and there and finally no end, no start, just like a, so that this is what is the actual following in the industry. So no one can claim that he is following his plan to the perfect as 100% accurate. So we need to make our mechanism strong to have the adaptive planning. So for effective team must have work of a prioritized backlog. We should have a prioritized backlog and do your work based on your backlog only. Have close collaboration with the customer. As I said in Agile, for customer, communicate and collaborate face to face rather than go for negotiation, which is the Agile Manifesto number 3. That is, focus more on customer collaboration rather than customer negotiation. Also, deliver a working tested increment every iteration. It is again one of the principles. Just keep in mind, we are just following the Agile manifestos and principles in all terminologies for the adaptive planning. So deliver a working, tested, incremented every iteration. understand that the direction will change and the team will respond. So we don't have a vision. Vision might be hazy today and might be more hazy in later iteration or might be more accurate. So team will respond to change. Maintain consistent staffing. You don't have to inject or you don't do the resource leading at every iteration. Suppose your iteration 1 is consisting of 4 developers, but in your iteration 2 you might have complex work, but Agile don't give you a freedom to inject more developers into iteration 2 so as to deliver iteration 2 also time. So maintain your rhythm in terms of time, in terms of resources, and in terms of number of requirements also. So maintain consistent staffing. That is what is adaptive planning. To have an effective planning, you must have to do. So what are the few of the tools if we talk about for the adaptive planning? Number 1 is velocity. So what is velocity? The sum of the story points for delivered stories in an iteration. That is, stories that are developed, tested and signed off by the customer. So if I say what is my velocity for iteration 1, considering I have a product backlog of 100 stories, if I do 10 stories in my iteration 1, then my velocity for that iteration is 10. So the number of story points is related to the number of velocity. So example, in iteration 2 we deliver only 4 stories, so 4 is the velocity for iteration 2, but 10 is the velocity for iteration 1, and you take a mean or an average, then your velocity would be 7 for both iteration, that is for 1 and 2. So try to maintain the rhythm in terms of velocity also. Don't make your team overload and neither give them liability or a freedom to have a less work. Maintain the rhythm. The next tool for to drive adaptive planning is burn charts. So either it is burn up chart or a burn down chart. What exactly is a burn chart? A simple way to track delivery based on velocity, showing the time and the required scope will be delivered in. So burn up or burn down chart is an example of information radiator. As I said earlier, information radiator is what? Which gives you health of a project or any status of a project or anything about the project at particular in a quick fashion. So burn up charts are used generally by the managers for either for the upper hierarchy or the stakeholders to showcase what exactly is the status or the current health of the iteration or the complete project. Moving next, we have progressive elaboration, which is also known as rolling wave planning. What exactly is the rolling wave planning? Rolling wave planning means that work package gains more detail the closer they are being current activities. So what does that mean? Just you see a image that a surfer is surfing on a sea or an ocean. So he don't have any plan in his mind. He is just modifying his or tweaking or enhancing his hands or the movements of his legs or the direction of his boat or the surf based on the tides or the waves, density, velocity, friction and all these parameters. So every time he makes a decision on the run time. So rolling wave planning, he don't have any plan in his mind. He is doing the things once they are coming into the place. So rolling wave planning is all about thoroughly planning whatever you can plan at the present time and replanning unclear aspects later. So you have a basic plan in your mind that you are going to surf, but how you will surf, that will get a clear picture once you are doing the actual surfing in the sea or an ocean. So this is what is the rolling. This is from this only the rolling wave planning gets his name. So this is usually practiced when you do not have all the details you need in order to finalize your plan. Most agile teams are concerned only with the 3 innermost levels. And what are these 3 innermost levels? One is release planning, the next is iteration planning, and the last one is the daily planning. So what does it mean at the broad level? You do the release planning based on the vision, then you divide your release into iterations, that is talking about iteration planning, and subsequently in every iteration you do a daily planning to deliver your iteration stories on time. So strategy at the top, then we have a portfolio, drill down, product, drill down again, you got a release, finally the iteration, and ultimately the day, which is the actual task. So this is what you do a rolling wave planning. So adaptive planning, rolling wave planning, progressive elaboration, or are the terms related for the agile, because agile is adaptive, iterative, and incremental continuous fashion approach. The next is, we are talking about user story, epic, and themes. So in Agile, we split the requirements or a project into these categories. So let me give you an example. At the top, we have a project. We divide the project into subsequent themes, which are marked in the green color on the left-hand side of the image. Then we have the epics. Epics are the large stories. And then we have the user stories. What are user stories? It describes the functionality that will be valuable either to a user or purchaser of a system or the software or the product. And a collection of related user story is what is we call as a theme, which is marked in the green. So project, theme, epic, stories, and ultimately all drill down to tasks, which is a day-to-day activity. So what is the user story? So user story is a story given by a user to defining their product. A simple example of a user story should be in a fashion of that as a persona. Persona is the person to whom the identity reveal. Example, in this case, if I am a customer and I want to build some site, then that I myself is a persona. So as and what is my role in that website? Suppose I am the admin of that website. So as an admin, I want to do so that why. I need to give what exactly I will do and what is the result of, that is the outcome of that particular action. So as an admin, I want to click on this button so that I can get the monthly or the annual reports. This is an example. Okay, so let's give it. So I can enter my name and email address. I receive an email confirmation. This is an example given by a John, which is a persona. So as a John, I want to register for an event to secure my place. So secure my place is the final result. As an event is the what exactly he wants. So this is a typical example of his user story, and you will definitely find at least 2 to 3 questions for user story, epic, themes, and tasks in an agile examination. So try to understand this concept in a thorough way. When we talk about the user stories, agile have few terminologies which will give you a quick briefing about a user story and also will keep you remember the prime characteristics of user stories. So when we talk about the characteristic of a user story, how should be the user story should be? So we have to keep 3 things in mind. That is the 3 C's. First C is card, second is conversation, and the third is confirmation. So actually, if you see an example of a user story is nothing but a simple card, a paper card or a cardboard card or a plastic card, any small square shaped handy card which can be put in a pocket or anywhere in a more compressed fashion. So it's a card format. It should be conversation enough and give a confirmation also. That is an agreement. So if you talk about a card, a written description of the user story for planning purposes and as a reminder. So this is what is the mean by card. What exactly is for conversation? A section for capturing further information about the user story and details of any conversation. Suppose a card is having XYZ requirement, so you take this user story or a card and go with the customer and converse with him to have the more clarity over to that particular requirement. So you need to do conversation. So user story demand, card, conversation, and finally the confirmation, that is the rephrasing or an agreement to acceptance. So a section to convey what test will be carried out to confirm that user story is completed and working as expected. So how you know that user story is complete or not? You need a confirmation from the customer, and you should have your confirmation once you have the user story. It's not like that you create a user story, you work on user story, you develop the user story, you execute and you test the user story and finally come to the customer that is my user story ready or not? No. User acceptance criteria is given by the customer or the end user at the beginning of the user story itself. So you have your vision in mind before starting or working on the user story. So in nutshell, a user story should follow, or you to keep in mind or to keep a memorable acronym is INVEST. That is, the user story should be independent, negotiable, valuable, estimatable, small or scalable, and finally T stands for testable. So what does mean for independent? The user story should be self-contained in a way that there is no inherent dependency on another user story. It should be independent. N stands for negotiable. User story up until they are part of an iteration can always be changed and rewritten. They are negotiable enough. It's not a hard-code fast-code story. If this story has been plugged, you have to work on it. It's nothing like that. You have the right to negotiate because teams are self-motivated, self-managed, and skilled enough to negotiate. And V stands for valuable. A user story must deliver value. If a user story is not delivering any value, it is for no use to the end user. So make sure your user story is valuable and estimatable. That is, you must always be able to estimate the size of the user story, that how much time you need to do or complete this user story. Finally, the user story should be scalable and testable. Moving ahead, we have 3 levels of planning in Agile. One is at the broader level, we have a vision, in which we have a vision statement. Then we have a product strategy, which talks about the market segment, price and channels, unique selling points, and finally the tactics at the core of the vision, which is user stories, your design sketches, that is the wireframes diagram, or scenarios and storyboards. So vision stands in a broader way: vision board, product category, vision board, business model, canvases or product roadmap, and tactics are finally for product canvas and product backlogs. The next terminology here in Agile, in adaptive planning, is MMF, which is minimal marketable feature. What is MMF? So a minimum marketable feature is the smallest piece of functionality. Remember the word smallest piece of functionality, that is minimum smallest piece of functionality that can be delivered, that also has a value to both the organization delivering it and the people using it. So you as a developer also should have some value to that minimal small piece of functionality, and also the final end user will also have some value associated to that particular feature. So MMF is minimal, that is minimum, marketable, that it should be shipped enough, and feature, that is it should add some value. So suppose you have a priority backlog of feature 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5, but MMF is only feature 1, 2, 3, 4. So in your iteration planning or release planning, you can skip for feature 5 for time being, because it is not adding any value to the customer or the developer. So a release is collection of MMF that can be delivered together within the time frame. Again, time boxing, keep in mind. So time boxing is setting a fixed time limit. You are setting the time limit to overall development effort and let other characteristics such as scope vary. So might be your scope may get vary, but your time will remain fixed. That is what all about time boxing. So few examples for time boxing in Agile is iteration. Suppose your iteration is ranging from 2 weeks to 4 weeks. So you have a time bound for 2 weeks. That is an iteration. Daily stand-up, 15 minutes, 3 questions. That is a time box. And the advantages for time boxing is you are focused enough. Increased productivity. So if you have anything fixed for time, you definitely have a productivity increased. Realization of time spent. You know how much time you have left. If you have to hurry up your things and that particular time frame. And available time can also be visible from time boxing. So the time boxing roadmap, planning roadmap, the vision statement, the product roadmap which we have discussed earlier, development planning, time box planning, daily stand-up, iterative review, time box, if all are examples of time box because everything has a start date and an end time also. Moving ahead, we have agile contracting methods. So contracting for agile software development is fundamentally different from traditionally project contracting. So using traditional contracts for an agile development project can endanger the project execution and causes the company to fail to get the potential benefits from agile development. So giving a quick look to the factors governing the agile contracts are ensure early business value, that is the ROI, return on investment, then secure time and cost, and lower delivery risk. So if you do not expect multiple and incremental deliveries, I don't recommend to go for the agile contract. Stick to your traditional approach. Although you won't find much questions related to the agile contracting methods in your examination, but definitely you should be aware of the agile contracting methods so as to implement the agile methodologies in your day-to-day and regular work. Moving further, we have burn charts, which we have discussed earlier also, but it is kind of a slightly enhanced, broader view of the burn charts. And as I said earlier, burn charts is an information radiator. So we have two categories in burn charts. One is burn down chart and another is burn up chart. Both are almost of the same parameters, but we have different terminology. That is, a burn down chart shows how much work is remaining to be done in a project. So remaining is burn down, whereas a burn up chart shows how much work has been completed. So just remember up completed, down remaining. So of remaining of what and completed of what? The total amount of work. So burn down chart, you can see the graph. On the x-axis we have the time, that is the date. On y-axis we have the user stories. So initially we have the 10 user stories at the start of the project, but the end of the project we have left with the 0 user stories, and in between, suppose we have on the 5th of January 2013 we have almost 6 user stories which are remaining. So burn down chart is showing the remaining factor, whereas the burn up chart, personally I recommend burn up chart because they give you an impression of an positivity side because they are going towards the upper trend. So burn up chart is giving you a scope versus completed view of the total amount of work. So burn down chart and burn up chart of the same project, these both are of. In burn down chart, it appears that the team did not accomplish much in the middle of the project, but heroically finished everything at the end as seen in the graph of the burn down. But in burn up chart shows the complete picture that the scope increased at the beginning of the project and some scope was removed to finish the project by the deadline. Willis, the team made steady progress throughout the entire situation of the project. So burn up chart gives you a better. So if you find a question related to a scope and completeness of a user story or a project iteration, then burn up chart is the best answer to opt for in. Next, we have an enhanced version of the graph, which is cumulative flow diagrams, CFDs. So the cumulative flow diagram provides a graphical depiction of how user stories are moving through various stages or the statuses on the way to being done. So if you see the image or the graph, so the blue ones are not started, the purple ones or the magenta ones are started work, that is they are in progress. It shows the WIP, that is the work in progress, and the yellow ones or the cream ones shows you the user stories which are completed. So it shows us the total scope of a project grouped by status, and thus let us know how much of that scope is in a particular status at a given time. So from cumulative flow diagrams we can see, number one, whether or not value is being delivered as the result of our DLIT level activities, are stories reaching the final status or not, that is from not started to the completed, how much we have a bottleneck or the work in progress, where the bottlenecks are in our workflow. It gives, so from cumulative flow diagrams you can able to sense or judge your bottlenecks, and you can do some remedy over to those bottlenecks to remove those impediments to so that there is a bottleneck downstream of that statuses. Also, how long it takes something of value to produce, example cycle time, how long does it take to go from entering the initial status to entering the, so you can say from the graph from 1 to 5 it shows the started, so it takes 5 weeks to complete the one user story, and similarly it gives you a cycle time where the scope of a project is changing. It also shows the total size of the backlog. So cumulative flow diagrams are very effective way to show the work in progress and the bottlenecks. The next one example for information radiator again is the Kanban board. The Kanban technique emerged in the late 1940s as Toyota's reimagined approach to manufacturing and engineering. So Kanban is just a Japanese word by which it means visual signal or a card. So on a board you have multiple cards which is showing the pending status, analysis status, design status, test, and the final. So by looking at the Kanban board, anyone can tell you the health of a project, that how many tasks are in work in progress, how many of them are completed. It's just an enhanced version of a cumulative flow diagrams, which we can use as an information radiator in our project to describe the health of a project. So the system's high visual nature allow teams to communicate more easily and on what work needs to be done and when. It also standardized queues and refined processes which help to reduce waste and maximize value. Definitely if you see number of user stories more into the work in progress, definitely you need to inject more players into the team so that you can have a smooth rhythm. It is a concept related to lean, which is ultimately the just-in-time production. As said, I use the term Toyota as a manufacturing, which is again the originator or the father for the just-in-time production mechanism from quality. Kanban boards help the team in knowing how they are doing and what they do next. And Kanban, so in nutshell, it provides multiple benefits, which is reduce inventory and produce obsolescence and reduce waste and scrap, provide flexibility in production, displays work in progress, and increase ultimately the output. So these all are the benefits from the Kanban boards. Next, in the slide, I have for you the structure of a retrospective meeting. I was using the term retrospective meeting throughout my session in earlier modules also. So what exactly is the retrospective? So in retrospective meeting, we do a kind of a retrospective or a deep analysis. What went fine, what went wrong, what were best practices, the kind of learnings in any iteration. So after every iteration, we do kind of a retrospect. So what is this retrospective meeting? We have generally these 5 steps or a structure which can define the retrospective meeting. The number 1 is set the stage, in which, I mean to say, Ask everyone in the room to speak, because Agile says communicate, communicate, communicate. Ask everyone in the room to speak, team values and working agreements. The next level is gather data, which is based on facts and feelings. The third is generate insights, which means step back, see the big picture and develop into root cause. So do a kind of a brainstorming, do the deep analysis, root cause analysis, just go deep inside the thoughts to generate insights, and which ultimately give you inputs for decide what to do. Out of those brainstorming sessions in the generate insights, list the potential experiments, 1 or 2 per iterations. Better right before the flying, that is after the break. So decide what exactly you need to do, and ultimately close the retrospective with a positive note that recorded based on the lessons learned, and retro on the retro again. That is, you need to do the same kind of a steps level 1 to 5 in your next retrospective meeting. So giving you a time breakup, which is kind of a originated from the Agile gurus, that set the stage should be approximately of a 5%, which is 6 minutes. Gather data would not take more than 40 minutes. That corresponds to 30 to 50% of your total time. Generate insights is 25 minutes, leading to 20 to 30%. Decide what to do is 20 minutes. Close the retrospective, that is the 5th level, actually takes 12 minutes, and scuffling of the time corresponds to 17 minutes, and in total you will have a 120 minutes. But retrospective meeting should carry not more than 2 hours. So after 90 minutes you can take a 10 minutes break. So this is all about the structure of retrospective meeting. Moving further, as I said in the third, that generate insights. So generate insight, for that we need to do root cause. But how do root cause and generally other stuff? For innovative games, kind of a planning poker. So what does this is? A customer reads the story. We generally do the innovative games or the planning poker for your estimations. So estimating a user story. So suppose a user story XYZ, customer reads the story, and the development team members A, B, C gives 3 random estimates. Suppose A, B, and 1, 2, and 3. But which is to be considered as the final. So team estimates. This includes testing. So again, now they have a kind of an more accurate. So one say it A say it's 1, B say it is 4, C say it is 5. Now team discussing among themselves, and because we have an outlier of 1 and 5, might be 4 is not consistent, but now 4 needs to discuss why A thinks that user story will take only 1 man day or a 1. The unit can be anything, or with a C member, how you think it takes a 5. So ultimately they give a team discussion and ultimately coming to a final conclusion, and they all accept to a final agreement of 4, which is the estimate for that particular user story. So each estimator is given a deck of cards. Each card has a valid estimate written on it. Customer or the product owner reads a user story and it discussed briefly. Each estimator, that is the developer A, B, C, selects a card, and that's his or her estimate. Cards are turned over so all can see them. Re-estimate until estimates coverage. And finally, we have the process tailoring. So Agile is dynamic and adaptive. So we have the right to tailor our processes according to the needs or the demand of the team, individual, stakeholder, project manager, product owner, or the Agile coaches, that is the Scrum Master. So define the scope of the tailoring document. That includes the determine what processes and tools are mandated by the organization, determine which process areas to document or tailor. Then the next step is the involve appropriate stakeholders. Depending on the process areas you indeed to tailor, you will want to involve the affected team members. Then leading to the next level, we have decide how the process will be documented, leading to develop project specific content. Now this is the time to develop the things project specifically. So identify reusable process, assets like applicable practices, guidelines, best practices, lessons learned, examples, etc. And later we have the decide which tool will be used to create and maintain work products, and ultimately you have the review mechanism, and all is an iterative and a continuous improvement resulting to the approval of the process. So that's all I have for today in my bucket for Agile. See you soon. Thank you very much. Bye. Good day. Take care.